Hello, Worship Tribe. Welcome to this month's video. We're in the middle of a series on questions that worship leaders are asking. And today's question is one that I have been looking forward to talking about for quite some time. We're going to talk about the relationship between the senior pastor or lead pastor and the worship pastor. I know you all can't wait. But it continues to come up as I'm chatting to people around our movement. It is a sacred relationship, but it's not always easy, and there's so many different dynamics and aspects to this that people have mentioned to me over the last couple of years. So I have invited some special guests here with me today, and I've invited them because I think they model this out really well, and I think they have something to say to us, probably even some practical tips that we can take away and implement in our everyday worship leading lives. But this is Andy Masters and James Toal from Lagan Valley Vineyard. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. For starters, could you just tell us a little bit about Lagan Valley Vineyard in case people don't know about you?
Sure. So we have been going for 6.5 years, 7 years this autumn, and James has been a part of the church from the very beginning, and we're about 500 people, 9 staff, and having lots of fun in the middle of it all.
You value fun, don't you? Okay. So you are senior pastor,
That's right.
right? All right. James, you are worship pastor, isn't that right? How long have you been worship pastor for?
Officially, by 3 years, yeah, 3 years. So
The church has been going for
It's nearly 7. So
7 this October, right?
yeah. So when we started, you were around, and I guess available. And so he's been leading worship from the very beginning. Now, Mark, another person who planted with us, and my wife led a bit at the beginning, but our worship ministry and community has been really developed by James over the last 7 years, I suppose, and in a staff capacity, full time for about the last 3 years.
So, James, I would love to know how this works for the two of you, this dynamic of senior pastor, worship pastor. Apparently, you get to go first, so fire away.
I'll tell you if he gets it wrong.
Yeah. So I suppose for us, it's been really for us very, very relational. Not so much professional, but definitely relational. And so, like Andy said, I've been around the church for the last 7 years and been leading for about 6.5 of that. So for me, friendship's been really important for how this has kind of worked, and because of that, I suppose what's come out of that, because we have that strong friendship, is having honest conversations. So I'll never forget the first time I led at Lagan Valley, and I just kind of finished, and there was maybe about 30-40 people around then, and came down to the back and was sitting, and Annie came down to me and said, James, that was great, well done. I was like, it wasn't me, not me at all, it was all the Lord. To which he responded, I'm pretty sure if it was the Lord it would have been a lot better than that. So I didn't really know how to process that and take that initially, but I suppose for me that was the starting point of knowing that honesty was going to be a key part to how this kind of relationship and friendship was going to work. So
I think one of the things that in our whole church we really value is getting better, growing. And so I think it was Andy Stanley said a long time ago that experience creates ruts. So the more experience you get at something, often actually you can just be practicing doing it badly. But evaluated experience creates growth, that there is no growth without some form or process of feedback and evaluation. So that's been a really high value of ours from the very beginning.
From day one.
Yeah, from day one. Yeah. From literally the first time, and it's probably helpful. Maybe not so applicable, but helpful that's across the board. That's not just when it comes to worship or Sunday specific stuff. That is like in our community. discipleship 101. Are you growing? And my job as senior pastor, but all of our job as team and staff, is to help those around us grow. And so feedback and having a process for that's really, really important. I guess what we've learned is the more intense the feedback becomes, the more healthy the relationship needs to be. And often the more healthy the relationship is, the easier the feedback is. Now, that's a wee bit technical, but because sometimes actually people really struggle to give feedback to their friends. Whereas we just set this up from the very beginning that that's how that was going to go. Well, to be fair,
I didn't get really a choice.
no, no. That's how, from my point of view, that's how this was going to go. And I think what was key for me was finding somebody who was hungry, teachable, and available. And like the technical ability wasn't something I knew a whole lot about or was even looking for. Actually, if I'm being totally honest. It was what I saw in James was somebody who was hungry to grow, was super, super teachable, and was actually available and could do it. So those things were really helpful for me then whenever it was like, and like, to be honest and to give you your due, like, you were a volunteer for 4 years and we met weekly, at least for the first 2 years, specifically for feedback. I mean, we had loads of other life stuff and church stuff going on, but we had a probably 30-minute conversation every single week, either face-to-face or on the phone. That was also, like, we didn't do the feedback sandwich, here's the 3 good things you did and the 1 bad thing and leave with the 3. No, like, it was pretty brutal,
Wow.
Here's everything that didn't go well and what you need to do better for next week.
Wow. How did you cope with that?
Well, I mean,
Sensitive musicians, like, people are dying off already watching this.
Anytime I knew that Andy was phoning about that or trying to arrange that, I tried to make myself busy for the first wee while.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
There is no escape.
Yeah.
You were relentless in your pursuit. That's amazing.
So I think then you just started like saying, do you want to come round and hang out? And then off the back of that, the feedback came. But yeah, I mean, for me at the start, to be honest with you, like, because it was new to me, like, though it did poke all my insecurities, and the fact that was being, like, my weaknesses were being talked about, that was not comfortable for me. But I learned that if I wanted to be committed to growing and following Andy, like, that was one of the things. And actually, through time, then and now, I'm hungry for feedback. Like, I'm phoning Andy after I've led worship or I've been speaking or whatever, Andy, what did you think about that?
So now you're asking for it.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. So
what's very helpful to know is that I was primarily trying to invest in a person, not a worship leader. So it happened to be that worship was the some of where his gift and calling was being expressed. But because I think it's really important, like, it wasn't that I was just trying to get access to a set of skills to grow the church that I was trying to lead. It was very much here's a person that I think God is bringing into our community or has brought into our community that I'm discipling. And so, because, I mean, not that it's for this video, but there's plenty of feedback you've got about lots of areas of life that aren't connected to worship leading over the years.
Yep, let's not go there.
So it was never just about, for me, this was never about, I need a worship leader, therefore I'm going to give him feedback about worship. It was always about, this is someone, a relationship I think that God has blessed me personally with, and therefore I'm invested in that friendship. And definitely 7 years later, it's much more mutual now than it was then.
So talk about the mutual thing, because you also are honest with Andy, right? It's not as if you don't have the opportunity to voice what you think and what you see. So how does that work?
So I mean, like, ultimately, like Andy is a leader and a person that I want to follow, and I'm submitted to that. But in the midst of that and the tension of that, we are very open and honest with one another and are willing to, I suppose, have heated, honest moments where like I can fully disagree with Andy, and he has the openness and the humility to listen to that. Now a lot of the time, like I think worship pastors have to realize that they maybe don't have all the wisdom that they think they have, and senior pastors are right a lot of the time. But I mean, I want to be able to put my point across, and I suppose I've grown in confidence, like what Andy touched on there a wee while ago. Like that wasn't something I maybe necessarily did at the start, but as our friendship has grown, I've felt more confident in putting my points across, and we don't take offense, which is super, super important, I think. So like I can be as honest with Andy as he is with me, and once the conversation's finished, that's it kind of left there. You know, it doesn't impact how I respond to him after that. It's done and dusted, you know.
So when it comes to the like how this works and the back and forth on it, I think it's maybe important to recognize that there wasn't that back and forth in the beginning. That, you know, we're 7 years in. James has grown into one of the best worship leaders I know.
He is amazing.
And so I have lots of trust in, even though we disagree, and actually that's one of the things we had to learn is there's sometimes he'll feel something intuitively that I can't fully explain, that that's still valid. Whereas in the very beginning, he'd never really done this before. And so there wasn't the same space for him to come with, well, I think you're wrong, because there's no greater reference there. And so I think it was really, for me, one of the things that enables me to appreciate his opinion, respect it, and value it is that I've watched him grow and learn and try things and be really committed and submitted to the process to the point now where he has something to say. Whereas, you know, 7 years ago, you know, that we just didn't have anywhere near the same amount to say as he does today. And so I think that it's really important for people to have a really like a good amount of self-awareness of where they are, you know, rather than just feeling like they're full of their own opinions. But what are their opinions based on, and what kind of track record have they there? Because that's really, really important. You know, just because you have a great voice and you can play guitar doesn't mean you know much about leading worship or a room or a ministry time or all that kind of stuff. And so watching him grow in that has really helped me go, what do you think? And what did you see? And how did you think that went? And it's funny because when it comes to feedback in the early days, I would start with, here's my feedback. I never start there now. My first question now is, what did you think?
So you're talking about relationship is key. You're talking about honesty and how you actually communicate. There's a regularity to that as well, and a consistency that I'm noticing, which is, I know you're saying you don't have a system necessarily, but there is a consistency to it, which is really helpful. It's not a sporadic thing. It's very consistent how you communicate it.
Deliberate.
And the relationship is intentional as well. And you pursue that. Yes. And that's really, really powerful.
And that's way more important to me, and I think to us, than, you know, Sunday gatherings and the fact that we both are paid by the same church. You know, the fact that we do life together, we're actual friends. You know, we're not friends because I'm his boss or we're in the same church. We're genuinely friends. So, and that's grown. I think it's important to emphasize that. Like 8 years ago, we didn't know each other. So the context for the friendship has been church, but the friendship now is way broader than church. And
that's so good. Another thing that you said, James, was, I think you made the statement of, I found a leader I could follow. And so maybe just say a little bit about that before we land this conversation today. You found a leader that you could follow. Why could you follow him? What did you see in him? Even though he gave you really robust feedback from day one, right?
I think that's why.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think I knew that at the start, you know, that definitely took me a while. Like there was definitely my own stuff that I had to get past to figure that out. But when I realized that this guy was committed to being honest to me, and I think that's the thing, like that, like it's not necessarily like your personality. It is maybe easier for you than other people, but it's still not easy having those honest moments and those conversations. But I seen that he was committed um to seeing me grow, you know, and he also wanted to create a space for me that I could make mistakes. And I think there's probably part of that, the feedback thing, you know, even when we are having a conversation and you maybe know that you're right, there's sometimes I think in the midst of that that senior pastors have to let their worship pastors have a moment to fail, you know, and maybe not step in and be like, okay, I am the authority here. You shall not do that. It's because I'm sure there's times, you know, where Andy's been like, oh gosh, that's going to be a car crash. But you know what? And that was one of the other reasons, I suppose, with Andy, that one of the reasons why I wanted to follow him, and you had found somebody that he was willing to take a risk on me and give me the freedom to do that.
So good.
And I suppose that's filtered down now from Andy to me, but now from me to all our other worship pastors, you know.
But I think there's a really important thing here, even for worship pastors, to understand that there's a big difference between feedback and control. Control is emotionally easier for the person who's in authority. Feedback is much messier. And actually what's interesting is over the last 7 years, there's almost never been like a time where you've come to me and said, here's what I'm planning on doing, that I've said, you can't do that. What I try to do at least is think that might not go so well, and then that comes out in the feedback. So there's always the freedom to try. There's the freedom to take risks. There's a freedom to, you know, there's a freedom of expression, you know. But if it's gone badly, that will come out in the feedback rather than, you know, up front. I'm always trying to go, if someone comes with a new idea, almost always even if I think it's a bad idea, I'm like, well, knock yourself out, because I know that next week we'll be talking about why that maybe wasn't the best idea. But that is what encourages the freedom to create and develop and grow, rather than, you know, having somebody that's constantly coming to you for, well, what do you think with this? Can I do this? Can I do that? I mean, that is not our dynamic at all. You know, there's no, you know, there's no, like, I don't hear about much of it ahead of time. You know, sometimes if it's a big thing or if it's something really out there new, or a person maybe that we're going to try or something like that. But even at that, I'll always defer to his decision making, and then we'll talk about how it went.
That's brilliant. It also strikes me that sometimes we as worship leaders are looking for the warm, fuzzy, you know, mommy or daddy person to give us a cuddle, when actually I think there was a great deal of discernment in you to realize that maybe hurt a little bit, but this guy's invested. He actually really cares, and he actually is like a dad to me, because he is prepared to say some hard things to me. So maybe that's one thing that we can take away from this conversation. But I just love what you're saying about relationship. And I think if all of our churches could have even a fraction of the kind of dynamic, the relationship between the two of you, we would be so healthy. So I don't, you might not think that, but I've been up close and personal with these guys, and it's really, really inspiring. So no matter where you are at with your relationship with your senior leaders, be encouraged today that if you invest in that relationship, and if you're prepared to take on board some what might feel like difficult feedback, but if you're prepared to do that, that you will grow, you will develop, and so will your relationship, which is, I think, very honoring to Jesus as well. So thank you for what you do. Thanks for sharing your heart and your experience with us today. We'll see you next month.